Good morning, and welcome to First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church as we safely stream our services to you until it is safe to come together again. My name is Annie Foerster, and I'm proud to say I'm the minister of this congregation of caring people who believe in love, compassion, peace, and justice. We operate under the principles that all people are worth our care and concern, that justice, equity, and compassion should underlie all relationships, that spiritual growth is as important as physical and mental growth, that all truths have merit but must be examined from knowledge and experience, that individual conscience prompts the individual, but the democratic process is imperative for the welfare of the community, that peace and liberty with justice for all is the everlasting goal of life, and that we are all part of existence, interdependent upon one another, and have a sacred duty to maintain the web that connects us. All faiths are important to us so long as they do no harm to any other. Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As faithful Buddhists around the world celebrate the birth of their leader some 2,560 years ago this week, we too join in the spirit of celebration by learning more of his great teachings. I want to welcome Mr. Herbert Prelitz, who is going to play the violin along with Misha as we start our worship with a prelude. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. What a blessing. Thank you so much for joining us. And Misha has told me that he wants to give a fundraising concert here in the next month or so, and my understanding is he will have a partner, and this is who it is. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you. Just a little hint, watch for the date. My call to worship this morning is from Thich Nhat Hanh, who wrote, "Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become holy ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being common to us all and to all living things. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion toward ourselves and toward all living things. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on the earth." Please join me for our opening hymn. If you have a hymn book at home, it's number 370. All people that on earth do dwell will sing hymns, verses number 1 and 3, and the words will be on your screen. All people that on earth do dwell, sing ye aloud with cheerful voice. Let hearts in exultation swell. Come now together and rejoice. For we believe that life is good, love doth abide forevermore. Truth firmer than a rock hath stood, and shall from age to age endure. Please join me as we light our chalice this morning. The words should be on your screen. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The light of our chalice shows that we go forward together. Please repeat our affirmation with me. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Rejoice in love we know and share, in love and beauty everywhere. Rejoice in truth that makes us free, and in the good that yet shall be. And today I want to say that we are thankful for all who continue to be generous in these difficult times, both with financial support and with the work of their hands and hearts and minds. Now is the time for the story for all ages, and it is a Buddhist story called The Useless Eyebrows, as told by the Venerable Master Sheng Yun. Once, a person's eyes, nose, and mouth had a meeting, and if it was during these times, it was probably a Zoom meeting. First, the eyes said, "We, the eyes, are of utmost importance to the body. Everything must be seen by us to know whether it is beautiful or not, big or small, tall or short. Without eyes, walking around will be very difficult. So we, the eyes, are very important. But those bushy eyebrows, which are of no use, have been placed above us. It's just not fair." And then the nose said, I, the nose, am the most important. Only I can distinguish a good smell from a foul odor. The act of breathing is also dependent upon me, and if I do not let the breath pass through, the body will die. So I am the most important. As important as I too have been unfairly placed beneath the useless eyebrows, and I am most unhappy. And then the mouth said, I am the most important part of the human body. I alone can speak. If not for me, there would not be any communication among people. I take in the food. If not for me, everyone would die of hunger. Such an important part as myself has been placed in the lowest part of the face. The useless eyebrows, however, have been put on the highest part of the face, and this I cannot accept. After the others had spoken, the eyebrows spoke slowly and quietly. Please do not fight anymore. We, the eyebrows, are surely the most useless things, although we do keep the sweat from pouring into the eyes, and we shade the nose from sunburn, and we emphasize what the mouth is saying by lifting and lowering while it speaks. But we must admit defeat, and we are willing to be placed somewhere below you. And having said this, the eyebrows settled down below the eyes. Unfortunately, the person no longer looked like a human being. Even the birds laughed at him. So then the eyebrows settled down below the nose. They weren't like a mustache because they were rounded. They were too round and bushy to make a good mustache. It was still horrible. It still did not look like a human being. Even the dogs barked with laughter. Then the eyebrows settled down below the mouth. This looked even more ghastly. Even the cats laughed to see such a strange creature. The eyes, the nose, and the mouth huddled to discuss the situation again. They concluded that it was best if the eyebrows returned to their original place on the face. It was the most appropriate spot for them and did not mean that they were most important. When the eyebrows returned to their original spot, the appearance was once again that of a human being. From this story, we can see that what appears to be the most useless things can indeed be the most useful without bragging about it. Excuse me. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I've broken my sermon into two parts, and I'm going to have part one now. I call it Buddha, the Story. And like the stories of many religious leaders, the tales told of Buddha's birth, life, and death are partly historical, possibly true, and delightfully fantastical. These stories are told to help people understand that this particular leader, be he possible prophet or supposed savior, is not like everyone else. Sometime around the year 563 before the Common Era, a baby boy was born in what is now Nepal. He was born to Queen Maya, a Kolyan princess, and King Suddhodana, leader of the Shakya clan. He was named Siddhartha Gautama. Legend has it that on the day he was conceived, Queen Maya dreamt that a white elephant with 6 tusks entered her right side, and 10 months later Siddhartha was born. And she named him Siddhartha because it means he who achieves his aim. Queen Maya believed that he was destined for greatness, and she sent for several priests that they might predict his future. The priests gathered together and agreed that he might possibly become the greatest king that had ever lived. His father was delighted. But, they said, he also might possibly become the greatest religious leader of all times, easing the sufferings of humankind. Now, his father did not take kindly to that idea. His son would be a king. All the greatest teachers were secured to tutor the child in the arts of being a good king. In addition, he had a troop of bodyguards to keep him safe and make sure he never left his father's compound. He was to be shielded from the outside world, never to know that suffering existed. Well, of course, the boy grew up happy in his ignorance and intelligence from his tutoring. He married and had a child of his own. But one day, when he was about 29 years of age, he began to wonder what was outside the gates of his father's land. He bribed one of his guards to take him to the marketplace. There he discovered the truth about human existence. He, like everyone else in the world, was subject to 3 fatalities: disease, old age, and death. He saw them with his own eyes for the very first time. Now, the theology of the day in his father's land was that of Brahmanism, which said that humanity was bound to the wheel of life and death, being born again and again into human suffering and dying in misery. He thought, surely there must be something more. Couldn't there be a liberation from this wheel of life, a final resting place in nirvana where Brahma and Atman, the rulers of life, themselves resided? He decided he would leave the palace of his father and join a group of ascetics asking the same questions. He would live the pure and perfect holy life and return one day with the answers. His mother and father opposed his decision and wept with tearful faces, but he heeded them not. For many years, Gautama traveled with these holy men, subsisting only on what food could be begged from in the marketplace, and abusing his body in the quest of improving his mind. The fat and happy Buddha we see depicted as an icon of this faith, or the serene and meditative Buddha like the one I have in my office, are a far cry from the pictures we see depicting a starving, sorrowful Gautama of those early years. He decided that these dedicated men, like himself, had no idea how to achieve liberation or nirvana. He left them and wandered by himself for a while, managing to take better care of his health, eat the food his body required, converse with the teachers his mind craved to hear. He became a student of meditation. Emptying his brain of all that was false, he began to consider what might be true. Finally, he set himself under a Bodhi tree, a kind of fig, and said he would not leave until he understood the answers he sought. He meditated, keeping his mind free so that truth might enter. And one day, he suddenly understood the answers to all the questions he had asked. He opened his eyes and realized he was awakened for the first time to what was possible in life. The name Buddha means he who is awake. His understanding can be related in 4 truths called the 4 pillars of Buddhism. And the first truth is this: all life is dukkha, which has been translated into English as suffering. But this term includes all that is unsatisfactory to human beings, flawed or awry, anything from annoyance to agony, including envy, disappointment, misunderstanding, and sadness, is considered dukkha. Hence, all life is dukkha. But the second truth is that there are causes and conditions that create dukkha, including cravings, greed, aversion, and delusions. The third truth, then, is that if we eliminate these causes, dukkha also ceases and liberation ensues. And finally, the fourth truth is that there is a path that leads to this elimination and directs us to nirvana, whose name signifies an eternal extinguishing of suffering. So that's it. That's what he figured out. 4 simple statements. There is suffering. There is a reason for suffering. Eliminate the reason and you eliminate suffering. And there's a path for doing so. It is that last statement that requires more explanation, however, which I will save for part 2. So Buddha rose from his spot under the bo tree and went forward to teach for the next 45 years. He taught kings and farmers, educators and slaves. He created communities called sanghas and lessons called sutras. He died in his 80s, having achieved his goals. But like many religious leaders, he left no written history of his life or his teachings. The first writings about his teachings were distributed by his disciples 100 years after his death, his followers having carried them orally around the world. But for now, let us look at our own concerns and those things that give us joy. It is the time in our service for the communion of names and milestones. It's been 1 month since the census went out to everybody in America. In Texas, the reply rate is only 49.6%. Less than half the population has responded to this very important questionnaire. So if you are one of the 50.4% who haven't answered the census survey, please do so now. It is so important that everybody be counted. And if you know someone who hasn't, please tell them how important it is that everyone be counted. We have some good news to share. The Unitarian Universalist Association was offering grants, not directly to churches, but to some of the outside organizations that churches support. And we have been given a disaster relief grant for Eastside Community Assistance to help them in their work in this area of Fort Worth. And this last I have simply on rumor because no one has informed me what's going on in their lives, but I hear things. And I've heard that Della Purdon had surgery on her ankle and is doing well. If this is not true, Della, please let me know. For our meditation this morning, I would like to teach you a Buddhist loving kindness meditation. And then when Misha plays the music after our silent meditation, you may continue with this loving kindness meditation if you want. And this is how it goes. You start with yourself so that you are strong and able to give help to others. That's the Buddhist way. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of many. And so in your meditation you say, "May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I have peace and joy. May I know love." And you say this as often as you must to convince yourself that you are worthy of loving kindness and the rest, and that you indeed have it. And then you consider all your loved ones, your friends, and you picture them before you and you repeat, "May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you have peace and joy. May you know love." The third part is probably the most difficult of this meditation. I hesitate to say you think of your enemies. Let's say you think of those who are not friends to you. You picture them before you, and you say with all of your heart, "May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you have peace and joy. May you know love." This isn't an absolution. This is just a wish, a blessing for all the world. And let me tell you, if you are successful in part 3, your heart will be softer than when you started. So let us start with just a moment of silence and say to yourself the words of the loving kindness meditation. And then when I leave, Misha will play and we can continue our meditation along these lines. and may the whole world be filled with loving kindness. My reading today comes from Karen Armstrong's book that she titled simply Buddha. And she said, where the 17th century French philosopher René Descartes would declare, I think, therefore I am, the Buddha came to the opposite conclusion. The more he thought in the mindful yogic way he had developed, the clearer it seemed that what we call the self is a delusion. In his view, the more closely we examine ourselves, the harder it becomes to find anything that we can pinpoint as a fixed entity. The human personality is not a static being to which things happen. Put under the microscope of yogic analysis, each person is simply a process. What is the process? That is our life. Please join me in singing our hymn, I Know This Rose Will Open. It's a brief one, and we'll sing it twice. Maybe that process is like a rose and can open and close as we meditate upon it. So to lesson part 2, Buddhism, the teachings. Now before I begin to impart any of the teachings of Buddha, I want you to understand this. I am a reader of Buddhism. I am an appreciator of the teachings of Buddhism. They make sense to me like many religious truths I've studied haven't made sense. But I am not a practicing Buddhist nor an expert on Buddhism. If what I impart to you today appeals to you in any way, there are hundreds of books, dozens of teachers, and several Buddhist temples in the area. Your response to my explanation can be either, isn't that interesting? Or, I need to find out more about this. I think Unitarian Universalists benefit by knowing of what I call the other questions and the other answers. How you use them in your life is an important part of your life. So, Gautama, now Buddha, didn't claim to have invented a new religion. He said that what he discovered has been taught throughout the ages by all the best and brightest religious leaders. What he said was simply a statement of things, quote, as they really are, unquote. The path was written into the very structure of existence from the beginning. According to Karen Armstrong, only one of his biographers, it was therefore the Dharma, or the law of existence, because it elucidated the fundamental principles that govern the life of the cosmos. If men, women, animals, and gods kept to this path, they could all attain an enlightenment that would bring them peace and fulfillment, because they would be no longer struggling against their deepest grain. For the rest of my explanation, I go back and forth between Armstrong's book, Buddha, and a course developed at Harvard Divinity School called the Religious Literacy Project. Now, the interesting thing is that anyone can become a Buddha, an enlightened one. You will know when you have awakened. In the meantime, there is a path, a way, a program, a practice. Buddha called it the Eightfold Path. To develop this freedom, one must practice habits of ethical conduct, conscientious thought, and freeing meditation that enable one to move along the path. and these habits are 8 in number. I'm going to list 8 different things and talk about them, and you won't remember them all. You can take notes if you want, but know that if you want to know more, you can simply Google Buddhism or the Eightfold Path, and there is plenty online that you can continue to learn from. So the first habit is right understanding, really knowing, for example, that unwholesome acts and thoughts have consequences, as do wholesome acts and thoughts. And how do you know? Why, you study the experiences of others who are awake, and you consider your own experiences in their light. Right understanding. Second is right intention, recognizing that actions are shaped by habits of anger and self-centeredness, or by habits of compassion, understanding, and love. We know the difference, Buddha said. We choose how we act. Our intentions manifest our behavior. So right intentions. Third is right speech, recognizing the moral implications of our words. Truthfulness. Truthfulness is the key, starting with your own truths, lifting them out, confronting them, comparing the results achieved by them, and doing it honestly. Right speech. Fourth is right action, observing the 5 precepts at the foundation of all morality: not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and not clouding the mind with intoxicants. These are not commandments, these are not principles, these are precepts, truths that are immutable, that existed before we existed. Right actions. Fifth is one I find so interesting, and Buddha called it right livelihood, earning a living in ways that are consonant with the basic precepts. So if, for instance, you have a job, say, of making bullets, you can rationalize that it supports your family, which is a good thing. But if a bullet you made kills a creature, human or animal, you are as guilty as the person who loaded it into the gun and pulled the trigger, according to Buddha. He never said the path was easy. The next idea in the path is right effort, cultivating this way of living with the attention, the patience, and the perseverance that it takes to cultivate a field. Right effort includes always keeping the path in mind, always knowing where your feet step on the path or when they veer away from it. Right effort. 7 is right mindfulness, developing the presence of mind through the moment-to-moment awareness of meditation practice, including mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of walking, and mindfulness of bodily sensations. I always find the practice of breathing as part of yoga to be one of the most fascinating. Breathing is required for life, just as eating is. We are very aware of hunger and taste, preparation and preference. But with breathing, we simply do it without thinking, without awareness, unless we happen to lose our breath from overexertion or fear. So to be mindful of breathing, then, is a practice all its own. And finally, the 8th step on the path is right concentration, developing the ability to bring the dispersed and distracted mind and heart to a center, a focus, and to see clearly through that focused mind and heart. Buddhism asks, what is your concentration focused on? Is it focused on the 3 fires of greed, hatred, and delusion? Or the very things that make dukkha part of all life? Or is it focused on the 5 precepts of not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and not clouding the mind with intoxicants? Though it is called the middle way, neither harsh nor easy, it is a demanding path, but a logical one, a possible path, a path worth exploring, if not of following completely. I can tell you some of the many reasons why Buddhism is popular among Unitarian Universalists, and we do have many Buddhist UUs. Buddha saw no virtue in submitting to an official creed. Unitarianism, too, is a creedless faith. Faith, Buddha said, meant trust that your goal, your nirvana, existed, and determination to prove it to yourself. It was this lack of creed that bothered some of his detractors. Where is the proof, they wanted to know? And also missing for some of his detractors was the explanation of why and how. What came before, they asked. Who created all of this? And Buddha said that all of this was unknowable. What difference did it make if the world was eternal or created somewhere in time? Grief, suffering, and misery would still exist. And it is the cure that is important, he taught, the here and the now, not the past and not the future. This is one of the reasons that Buddha says you must start on the path with yourself foremost. You are not able, no matter how compassionate you are, to help anyone else forward if you cannot help yourself. So, understanding, loving kindness, compassion, justice, goodness, and peace all start with you, just as they did in our meditation, but they do not stop there. I want to share with you a lovely sutra that tells it all. The sutras, remember, our lesson, and predicts more to come for you. Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past, do not dream in the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. You only lose what you cling to. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make our worlds. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. No one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must each walk the path. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, faithfulness the best relationship. So this is how you might celebrate Buddha's birthday. First, look inside yourself. Then go out and learn more and do good. Please join me in singing our closing hymn, verses 1 and 3. Love knocks and waits for us to hear. Our chalice has burned as a symbol of our being together as we are apart, and sometimes wax gives out before intention and our chalice has extinguished itself, but we know it lives in our hearts and our minds. So we end with a Buddhist benediction. What you are is what you have been. What you'll be is what you do now. So may it be in all our lives.